Okay guys, thanks for sticking around after the intro. Now that we're over in Adobe Premiere, we will quickly show you and run through how I turned this clip
And when it comes to the competition, the RAV4 dominates when comparing to vehicles like the Honda CR-V and the Hyundai Tucson.
into this clip here.
And when it comes to the competition, the RAV4 dominates when comparing to vehicles like the Honda CR-V and the Hyundai Tucson.
So when you're starting with the clip, obviously I shoot in manual mode on my Canon T6i, and I have downloaded a setting. I'll post a link down below on where you can find that and how you can install it onto your camera. So that way when I go into my editing on Adobe Premiere, I'm starting off with a flat image, or video I guess I should say. The reason I do this is, if you think about it, if you take a picture with Snapchat or Instagram, you add your filters. Now think of it as exporting that image with the filter already installed and then bringing it over and then editing with a software and then adding more effects. You're just going to end up with a washed out image, a video that's kind of over edited, and we're not going to want that. So here's where I start, and this is what it's going to look like when done. As you can see, the image is fairly dark, fairly flat. So what I'll start with is exposure in Adobe Premiere, and you kind of got to be liberal with it. You don't want to get too carried away because obviously you're going to get washed out, and you don't want to bring it down because then you'd just be too dark. So be careful with it. Kind of, you got sliders so you can move it around. When you find that you found it, move on to the contrast. Now I'm going to bring the contrast down a little just because if I go too high, it's going to be a little obviously too dark. And highlights I'm going to bring up a little because I want to accentuate the reflections on the floor, on the vehicles. I like the lighting in the windows and just the overall highlighting in the background. Shadows I'm going to bring down a bit, and obviously as you're doing it you can watch your image, and when you're happy move on to whites. Whites I'm going to bring up a bit because I want it to be brighter, and with bringing down the contrast you kind of got to even it out. A lot of this is, you know, going through the different settings. When you come down with whites, then you could come up with blacks and whatnot. It depends on the lighting in the video you're shooting. Once I'm happy with that, I'll come down to the creative tab, and because I've changed so much in here, I'm going to bring up the vibrance of the overall image, and then with doing that I'm going to bring up the saturation a bit. Then I'll come back to basic correction. I've kind of brought up the white so her skin tone is kind of just not where I want it to be. I'll bring up the orange a bit, and then the pinks a little, and even out the flesh tones. Her skin tones is more even now, looks a lot better, and I'm just already fairly happy with that. Bring down the blacks a little more because I want the focal point to be on her, but I want to be, you know, everything to still look nice in the background. Bring up saturation just a tad, and the vibrance a little more, not too much. I don't want her skin to look orange. I don't want it to look unnatural. So then I'll be happy with that. We'll play it through.
And when it comes to the
you
competition,
can see the reflection
the RAV4
of
dominates
the
when comparing
cars,
to vehicles
and the
like
blue
the
is
Honda
nice and crisp
CR-V
in
and
the
the Hyundai
background.
Tucson.
Now, with that,
The RAV4 dominates when comparing to
you can
vehicles
still
like
see
the
that
Honda
the sound,
CR-V and the Hyundai Tucson.
it's got that hum as opposed to over here.
RAV4 dominates when comparing to vehicles like the Honda CR-V.
So when doing that, I'm gonna bring in, head over to effects, audio effects, and then bring over adaptive noise reduction.
Dominates when comparing to vehicles like the Honda CR-V and the Hyundai Tucson.
And you can see that I already got rid of the hum in the background. So when you're doing that, you can come into edit, and there's, you know, a couple different just easy settings like filters you can add. But as you can see, it takes a second for it to clip in. And what I found, if I come over to here, what I found is signal threshold. I found that if you move it over to about 10, just over 10, it attacks a lot quicker.
To the competition, the RAV4
you can see it
dominates
doesn't take that long to come in.
Comparing to vehicles like
when the the clip starts.
And when it comes to the competition, the RAV4 dominates.
So I'll bring those up. This one I'll bring up to about 16, then this one to about 42%.
When it comes to the competition, the RAV4 dominates when comparing to vehicles like...
And you can still see that I've got a little bit of a hum. So I move that up. I'm going to right click here, set my gain to about, let's say 7. And what you want, you're aiming to have your audio
The RAV4 dominates when comparing to vehicles
coming up to about -12. That seems to be
The
the happy
RAV4
spot. If you look on the, if you're using a camera or if you're recording with an external mic, if you look on the default settings, it's generally set to about -12 for whatever reason. That's where they believe the best setting is going to be.
or dominates when comparing to vehicles like...
I try to find that and stick with that. Now, just for purposes, I'm going to just simply move that over.
And when it comes to the competition, the RAV4 dominates when comparing to vehicles like the Honda CR-V and the Hyundai Tucson.
So that's getting a little better already. So then what you can do is come back over to audio effects, look for the low pass setting. I'm going to drag over there onto the clip. Now here is where you kind of got to play around.
The RAV4 dominates when comparing to vehicles like the Honda CR-V.
That's not ideal or what you want. So to do this, all you got to do is
The
highlight
RAV4
here.
dominates when comparing to vehicles like the Honda CR-V and the Hyundai Tucson.
Bring that over. Obviously every video is going to have different sound quality, different volume levels. So this is where the drag and drop and the moving around, I mean, once you find it, you're going to know.
When comparing to vehicles like...
And then from there, I'll generally add a little bit of bass just to the voice, just for the sake of showing you guys what I've done here. I'll bypass the noise reduction again.
When it comes to the competition, the RAV4 dominates when comparing to vehicles like the Honda CR-V and the Hyundai Tucson.
Just again, I'll remove the color grading I've done.
RAV4 dominates when comparing to vehicles like the Honda...
What color grading can do for your videos as well as sound.
RAV4 dominates when comparing to vehicles like the Honda CR-V
and how the two of them go together to quickly improve your video. Re-add what I did for
RAV4
effects.
dominates when comparing to vehicles like the Honda CR-V and the Hyundai Tucson.
And that's it. It seems a lot
When
harder
it comes to
than
the
it
competition,
is. It's very quick and easy to quickly improve any video you're doing, depending on the setting, whatnot. You can see
the
that
RAV4
I had quite a bit of noise in the background.
comes to the competition, the RAV4 dominates when comparing to vehicles like the Honda CR-V and the Hyundai.
And in the end, it sounds much better, looks much better, a lot brighter.
The RAV4 dominates when comparing to...
And that being said, that's all I have for you guys today on how to quickly improve the look and sound of your video, especially in a setting like this where you're doing some speech or a commercial type setting. How to quickly improve the audio, because it is crucial, and what you can do to improve it. A lot of times people will have a great looking video and poor quality of audio. That being said, be sure to head down to the description where I will post links of anything I mentioned in this video as well. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notified of any upcoming content, and give me a big thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. And if you want, leave a comment down below of any video you might have used this tutorial in. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and as always, we will see you next time.